This week's episode of Still Untitled is brought to you by Google's Cloud Platform. What can your data tell you? With Google Cloud Platform, use machine learning at scale to build better products. It predicts so your business can thrive. Learn more about Google Cloud Platform at g.co/getcloudai. Again, that's g.co/getcloudai. And thank them for sponsoring this week's episode. Now on with the show.
Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I am Will.
I am Adam.
And I am Norm.
Hey guys, how you all doing this lovely Tuesday morning?
Doing really good.
Yeah.
Having a productive week. A lot of planning and plotting in the cave this week.
That's good.
For projects that hopefully will be announced soon.
I see big boxes on tables, and that always is exciting.
Well, yeah, we're working on some, it's always about organizing here.
You don't say. But I look around and everything's on a shelf. Everything's in its place. There's a place for everything.
But there isn't a place for everything, but we are constantly working towards that.
You know what you should start doing here?
Yeah.
And it's probably too late for this space, but if you ever move, you should take a picture maybe every Friday or at the last day of every month.
Right.
Just the same way, frame it, do a 360 or something, and then build a time lapse of that over. Because the evolution of this space in the just 6 years that Norm and I have been coming here is astounding.
That is a really good idea. I do have pictures of the space before I moved in when it was a marble cutting shop. And then I have pictures of the construction of the floor. And I do have some photos. I actually did a Make magazine cover shoot just after I moved in.
Oh, cool.
So there's some shots of me and Thing 1 and my wife and my dogs actually against the brick wall when you could see the whole brick wall and there was nothing on it.
Wait, there's a brick wall?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
How are you guys this week?
Doing good.
I got sick over the weekend, and
no.
it gave me an opportunity to catch up on a lot of television. We're not going to talk about, get out of the way, we're not talking about Black Panther yet. Maybe we'll at some point in the future. All I can say is go see it.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Already.
We'll talk about it next week.
I did see 3 Billboards, which I know you mentioned. Both of you mentioned with conflicting opinions on it. And Will, you have recommended Adam continue to push through.
Yeah. I know. I had a conversation with my mom. Hi, Mom, by the way. My mom watches religiously. We were talking a couple days ago, and she was like, "What was the problem you had?" And we talked about it, and she said, "Like you, muscle through, and you will be rewarded." And I will.
I don't think it's a movie about redemption.
No
one is redeemed, so
no,
it's not about that. But it is satisfactory.
I think everything is earned, is what I would say.
Yeah,
fascinating.
Yeah,
okay.
I found it was. I'm often sensitive to movies that are hard to watch in the same way that you are. There are definitely characters in that film that I profoundly dislike, maybe almost all of them. And I think it made me feel a way that movies generally don't make me feel.
Okay.
But something that we haven't really talked about in the podcast, and we're not a political podcast, but there are things going on in the world right now that actually kind of tangentially affect us. You posted something on Twitter the other day, reposted a build of someone did, of a prop replica, and people got
activated.
Yes, yeah. I didn't want to say up in arms about it.
No, they got activated.
Good job, Norm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry. So remind me of the tweet. It was
you retweeted someone who had finished a Blade Runner blaster kit. And
yeah. Okay, so people were like, "Aren't there enough guns in the world? Can you please?
Isn't this a bad time
Isn't this a bad time?" And I don't disagree with that. There are times in my enthusiasm, I'm barreling forward. Obviously, we're all fielding a lot of different signals. Am I too loud?
Was that me? No,
No, you're turning me down.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't tell which one's you.
That's okay. 1 2 1 2 1 2.
I want to be down. Thanks,
Got it. Okay. Yes. Sorry, Adam.
Yeah, and then I also I feel strongly personally about some sensible gun control laws being finally passed in this country, and I've been active on Twitter about this, and I had somebody reach out and said, "You are partially responsible for America's love affair with guns with what you did on Mythbusters." And I said, yes, we used guns and firearms on Mythbusters for many stories, but that does not preclude me having an opinion about how these should be used by our citizenry. That these two things are not mutually exclusive.
There's a difference between what we do for entertainment and what we should do in real life.
Yes, this is literally a life and death issue. And I recognize that the passion is strong on both sides of this equation. This week, I have seriously been so inspired by the kids from Stoneman High School.
Yeah.
They are incredible teachers.
But what about like for hobbyists, right? And when someone does a build of a fan build of a space gun that from a video game, or even if it's not a space gun, right? And they are putting something together that is a prop replica, and is it okay to celebrate that now? And can we draw a line the difference between making something that is celebrating the act of making?
You're asking a question about whether we can look at this in a black and white way, and I don't think we can. I don't think that's reasonable. That's culture. I had a girlfriend a long time ago who was mad that my sculpture and my art delved into like fantasy firearms. She thought that was violent and upsetting, and the world didn't need any more of that. And this was 30 years ago. And my response back then was, you presuppose that I have a choice. It's not like I don't have a choice. Of course I have a choice, but I'm also responding to my culture. I'm a child of, I've grew up in this culture. I'm responding to it and conversing with it. That's why I make the things that I do. That's very specifically what it means to be a person as far as I'm concerned. So I fully appreciate that when I retweet something and someone says, yo, it is too soon to be looking at something like that this week. And my response is, you're totally right. I get it. It doesn't mean that I'm going to stop doing the stuff that I'm doing, and I appreciate that emotional response, but that's different than advocating for some of the positions that have been advocated this week of like, we need to put more guns in the schools. This is,
Well, that whole we need to put more guns in the schools thing is the typical, hey, let's distract from everything that's important. And it's a farcical argument. He's putting forward a farcical argument to shift the conversation in the direction that he can control, so that we don't actually talk about the things that can make a difference.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. So back to your original question. We unfortunately, I don't even this is a giant and important question to keep asking. I don't think that there's a definitive answer to it. We all have to come to our own conclusions about what's important to us. But again, to me, it's about conversing with the.
Well, when I look internally, right, and we love the Blade Runner blaster. I'm just going to use that as an example. What are we loving? Are we loving you love ephemera
from a film,
right? But is it a fetishization of the gun, the prop as a gun, or the prop, or is it no different than that being an iconic prop, just the way Captain America's shield is as well?
For me, it's the iconic. It's that it's an icon of the film, it's a thing from a thing that I saw in a theater and wanted to have my own.
Look, Jim, I think that there's also something that's compelling to. It tends to be gendered, but it's not necessarily. But the action at a distance that a gun provides is like a magical power for human beings. Jim Jeffries, in his amazing 20-minute stand-up about American gun culture, and boy, you should go look at it because it's brilliant. He says, look, there's only one really good argument for guns, and it's, boy, I really like guns. And he goes, and that's a reasonable argument. Mm-hmm. I get it. And I get it. I totally get that. So I think it's twofold. I think it's multifold. I think there is to me, the Blade Runner blaster is my favorite weapon from a film because it feels so different and weird compared to what we normally have, and yet it doesn't feel so fantastical like a ray gun from Lost in Space.
With an aesthetic appreciation.
Right, and it anchors in a completely alternate reality, which is the Blade Runner reality, which is one, obviously, that we're deeply inculcated with. But we did a Blade Runner build this week as a one-day build, and we're going to hold it back for a while because it's not time to post that up on Tested. So we're making that decision, I think, reasonably and rightfully to let's not make this what Tested's all about this month.
I mean, it's nice to not draw the line in the sand on something that is going to be inflammatory for no reason.
Right, exactly. Right? And we appreciate that, but it's not like I have a clear answer on whether it's right or wrong or good or bad or I should be doing it or we should be doing it or we shouldn't be doing it. It's complicated. So specifically for me, just to state it outright, the complication is in how am I best supporting my culture to move forward to the right place where kids can go to school and not be afraid of dying, and we can have a reasoned discussion as a culture about how to both enjoy the rights enshrined in our Constitution and not all die.
I mean, it's one of those things.
I recognize that's slightly polemic, but go ahead.
Well, I wasn't really aware. You kind of grew up, I guess, a little bit in this time frame, Norm, and you have kids that are the right age to have been in school when instead of having fire drills and tornado drills and all the stuff that we had when I was a kid, you have lockdowns and you learn about active shooters and people learn to hide in classrooms.
When I was a kid, we had nuclear. We had nuclear drills.
We just had earthquake ones.
We didn't have. We just had fire. We had fires and tornadoes where I grew up, and the thought of what that does to your psyche when you start out at 5 years old and they're telling you to all sit in the closet and be really quiet and have a good time, versus when these kids are 18 years old and they realize why they or 15 years old and they realize why they've been hiding in closets their entire life. I understand why they're angry. That I would be angry. I'm angry knowing about it now and that I didn't know about it before. And I grew up with guns. I grew up in the South. I got a 410 when I turned 10 years old probably. And, grew up shooting skeet every weekend and shooting rifles when we went to the range and all that. And guns are fun. It's fun to go out and it is a skill that you can get proficient at. It's very satisfying and, they're fun tools. I went to the desert with a friend of mine one time in Arizona, and we shot assault rifles, and I was shocked. I'd never been exposed. I'd been exposed to semi-automatic shotguns, which is a little different because you get 5 rounds. But a semi-automatic assault rifle with a 20-round clip magazine. Sorry, gun people. There's the reason you have that is because you like to collect guns, not because you need it for hunting. You don't need to be able to shoot 20 rounds, reload in 3 seconds, and shoot another 20 rounds
when you're going after deer.
If you need 40 rounds to kill a deer, you probably shouldn't be hunting.
That's counteractive to the skill required.
Yeah, I mean, look,
when the Olympics are going, we talk about when they ski and shoot at the
biathlon.
The biathlon as being an amazing sport.
Yeah,
they
get 5 shots and 5 targets, or 6 shots and 5 targets. My father-in-law was a deer hunter for decades, right? And his 2 favorite things to do were to bow hunt and to muzzle load, which is a front-loaded single shot rifle. You get 1 shot at that one, and then you get to run through the woods for an hour chasing the animal you just shot down.
Look, we've just been. Up till now, it seems quite clear, given how much traction that the incredible students, I don't want to call them kids, because I don't think of them as kids, the students at Stoneman High School, we live in a country where for too long the debate about guns has been completely controlled by the National Rifle Association through its influence. And we end up having these ludicrous discussions where I kept on saying on Twitter last week, even to discuss arming teachers, we have already lost this debate.
Yeah.
That is not a thing that will ever be the reality. And if it is, it means that we are living in a dystopia.
Well, and one of my friends who's a teacher kind of mangled a Douglas Adams quote when she said, when I saw her this weekend, hey, the teachers that I know that think they should be armed are absolutely the ones that should never be allowed to have a firearm in school. Right?
Yes, right, exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not.
And, I'm, again, just to also be clear, because I know that the tested members are a wide political spectrum. I'm not advocating for taking all the guns. But when I say the NRA has controlled the debate, the national database of gun serial numbers is not legally allowed to be computerized because of legislation the NRA has managed to get through. Think about this for a second. They are literally not allowed by law to digitize the information. So if you want to find out who owns a gun, it's going to take you several days to call this department understaffed, where they're going to figure out through paper and cardboard boxes. You can Google this. It's really, really true. That is an indefensible position.
Well, like the work that they've done on the carry laws in places like Texas, where you can carry weapons into college campuses and hospitals and elementary schools is. I don't know about elementary schools actually. That one I should be careful on. Yeah. But it's bananas. Anyway.
I really appreciate what the students at Stoneman have been doing in pushing this debate forward to a place of some sensibility, and I really hope that this traction leads to genuine change. I want to help that traction lead to some genuine change so that we can, this isn't just a debate about crazy people. It's not a debate about deranged killers, because you can't arrest someone before they've committed a crime. That's just not how this works. This is a much bigger issue than we can tackle in this this week's podcast.
We're not the people to do that. We're not the people to answer these questions.
I think it's important to just bring up the fact that we're debating this with each other. We're debating it with ourselves, and we're debating this as a content producer.
And we can talk about it in the framework of how we celebrate what people make.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, to me, I have spoken to some people who are completely brilliant and don't understand what I do. They don't understand why I recapitulate my culture through its objects.
Yeah.
And they think less of me for this. That's fine. They totally, that is, there are people who invent everything out of whole cloth, and my hat's off to them. This is part of how, this is how I breathe in my culture. And I am agnostic as to how someone comes to making. And again, remember, when I say making, we mean everything. We mean storytelling. We mean filmmaking. We mean recording music.
Programming, 3D
programming,
art. Sewing, the whole thing. Yeah.
So, I don't care how someone gets interested in the need to make something. I think the act in and of itself is is a life-affirming one. And a culture-affirming one. And I think it makes you a critical thinker. I think of gateway drug. I think making is a gateway drug to critical thinking.
Well, not to circle back, but to circle back to the Blade Runner blaster.
Yeah.
It is an incredible piece of design that was born of the objects that it's created from. Like it's almost like a found object that was munged together from the available pieces that clearly somebody walked into a shop someplace and was like, okay, let's take this one and this one and this one and this one, and they made something that was much greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
And to me, the appreciation of that design, if you think about the time and mental energy that goes into the work creating props for films or TV or whatever it is, it's one of the great artworks of our time. Mm-hmm. And to you don't ask, should there be guns in movies, right? We have, thankfully, as a culture, backed away from putting a bunch of horrific violence in in art that's created for entertainment, that's created for kids, little kids especially, to the point that I was shocked when we were watching. We watched something with punching, and my daughter was like, "This is really scary, Dad. They're hitting each other." And I was like, "Oh, she's 5," and I would have not thought anything, because I'd been watching cartoons for 3 years by that point, where people beat the shit out of each other. Yeah. And she's like, "This is. I would not like to watch this, Dad." So part of what happens is we reset naturally over time as each generation tries to do better than the one that came before.
Less people smoking in movies now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Watch Cary Grant movies where they're smoking on the bus and in the elevator.
I don't know that my daughter's ever seen somebody smoke on screen.
Right.
Like in the movies that she's
and
watched.
I'm not against
seen.
people smoking on screen. I just think I like the reversion back to less smoking in movies that has happened over the last 20 years.
It's good that we're not normalizing that behavior from a very young age.
Exactly.
When you watch old pre-Sesame Street kids shows, there's a guy sitting there, the host is sitting there smoking a cigarette sometimes on the Saturday morning 50s shows.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't think it was like Howdy Doody, but that kind of show. Anyway,
Wow.
brought to you by Marlboro. No, I'm kidding. I don't think they were really brought to
Fred
you by
Rogers
Marlboro.
never did that.
No, Fred Rogers would never.
There were soap operas and smoke operas.
Yeah.
Do you see at Sundance that there's a Fred Rogers documentary coming out?
I
It's
heard
very
about
highly
this.
anticipated.
Isn't there a movie coming out?
There is also going to be a biopic with Tom Hanks.
With Tom
playing-
Hanks.
Yes.
Come on, it's perfect.
And I think I saw on Instagram that like Colin Hanks also played Mr. Rogers in
Like
some
young?
type of drunk history
Oh, that makes sense.
battle thing.
Do you know that? I know Mr. Rogers' weight because it was important to him. He weighed 143 pounds for his whole life.
Wow.
And it was really important to him because 143 are the numbers of the words "I love you."
Wow.
Is that a true one?
That is a true one.
Whoa.
I
No, I
believe that's
don't.
true.
Okay,
That
well, let us know in the
sounds
comments.
awfully apocryphal.
Look, this is a guy who every time he comes up on Reddit, someone is like, "Yeah, I wrote him a letter when I was 8, and when I was 12, I got a response because he wrote a response to."
Oh, yeah.
Did we already talk about this like a couple weeks ago?
No.
I feel like we were. Okay.
No.
Look, we can talk about Mr. Rogers as much as you want. I'm fine with that.
Well, the documentary is directed by a guy named Morgan Neville, and he directed the, I believe, Oscar-winning documentary 20 Feet from Stardom about backup singers.
Amazing.
And he is also the creative collaborator, producer of a new Netflix show that I want to give a high recommendation for, which is called Ugly Delicious. I know you guys haven't watched it,
right.
Yeah, yeah.
David Chang.
but this is David Chang's
Yeah.
new. It's his Netflix's Parts Unknown Bourdain
Is it
type
the
show.
same production team as Mind of a Chef?
Not. It's
Okay,
not.
no.
And what I did not know, Mind of a Chef was a PBS series
Mm-hmm.
that Anthony Bourdain produced. It was multiple seasons. Dave Chang was the face of season 1, but apparently that wasn't supposed to be a TV show. That was supposed to be a documentary, and then
Okay.
they had recut it up into a TV show. This is through and through a TV show, 8 episodes. Each episode is about a type of food, and Dave Chang, along with his collaborators, Pete Meehan, who is the New York Times food critic, who is the who co-ran Lucky Peach with him.
Yeah, they also wrote the Momofuku Cookbook.
Yes, they
together.
did. They did. They are the two leads of the show, and they, with their other chef friends, go and different guests every episode talk about. For example, the first episode is about pizza, and then very popular topic, and then they talk about all the different ways you can approach pizza and philosophies and what it means. But really, as all great food shows are, it's really a culture show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like there's a second episode about tacos, and the thing that I love the show so much, I've binged it all, and it's one of those shows that after you watch it, I wish I could buy like the Criterion Edition box set of the show
With
because
all
I
the
feel like
supplemental materials?
This is an important show.
Yeah.
That
You want all the parts and
I
bits
want.
and bobs.
I could replay, watch again. And he talks about. You read some of the interviews that Dave Chang talks about. He says that food is one of the last bastions of really passive racism. In
does
how
that
people
mean?
think
Fascinating.
about food. I'll just talk about like Chinese food, for example.
Okay.
Like we have fancy. In the high echelon of cooking, when you read a New Yorker review for a restaurant, you're gonna look at French restaurants and Italian restaurants, but you'll never see like a Chinese restaurant get more than 2 stars. And why is that?
Fascinating.
Well, except for Mission Chinese.
Right. But then it's only if it's Americanized.
Oh, that's true.
right.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't the place in the corner of Chinatown, which has all the history and all the interesting places, why isn't that?
Well, he talked about this with the MSG stuff years ago.
MSG,
Yeah.
exactly the same thing, right?
Because MSG became a sign of, like, no MSG became a sign of, hey, like, you want MSG in your food.
Right.
When you have,
It's in all of your foods.
Yeah.
It's in your potato chips. It's in all your snacks.
When you dry age beef, you're paying more for meat that has, naturally created MSG in the outer edges.
Yeah.
And most of the his contention was that most of the, like, no MSG panic of the 60s and 70s was about racism, because the thing that people could do if they were emigrating from Asia, no matter what they were, if they were a doctor, they couldn't come over here and work as a doctor immediately. They had to go back and get relicensed. Probably had to go to med school again, which is impractical, but they could sit down and make the food that they grew up with and serve it in a restaurant.
When he talks about, growing up, he's Korean American, right? But growing up and how he brought his family's food to schools, and that's not the food that looked appealing because it looked different.
Right.
And, I think I could relate to that. Growing up, I wanted Lunchables.
Right.
You wanted what
Well,
everyone else
yeah,
had.
that
culturally
was good
appropriate.
marketing.
You wanted
Yeah,
exactly, and it's funny because it's all spun around now because it's that quote unquote street food and the food trucks now that's become very hip, and
To want the authentic experience.
right. But what and authenticity is a huge thing. What does it mean to be authentic?
Well, orange chicken is the most authentic Chinese food I've ever had, right?
No,
Well,
and fortune
I mean,
cookies.
it's just as I was saying that down in Australia and New Zealand, where the Asian food tastes totally different. There are all sorts of different tastes. Their proximity to Asia means they have a much wider variety of Asian tastes. Even like I didn't know Northern Chinese food was a specific subset and had a radically different meal than I've ever had.
Oh, right.
before.
Like, that country is it's like a continent. Every province
Right.
is as big as a country in Europe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why is it lumped as one thing? Chinese food. I mean, when you talk about authenticity, the first episode, pizza, I'm not going to go into too many spoilers. Like, they go to Naples where pizza was invented, hundreds of years ago. And if you want Neapolitan pizza, there is a consortium, an organization that has the rules of what your cooking methods and what your ingredients have to be considered an official Neapolitan pizza. Otherwise, it's like champagne. Like,
Right,
it's
right,
champagne style. You can't call it champagne. It's from the area. But there are restaurants and pizzerias in the United States that have the certification, but the certification doesn't really make sense because if you have to use buffalo mozzarella, right, from a certain region in Italy, it's only makes sense if it's fresh because you're in Italy, close to there.
Right.
So
If it
isn't
takes
the
a week to get to you.
then what has it done? Yeah, is that really authentic?
Right,
You're using the same ingredients, but the idea of using fresh food isn't there. So he actually contends like the most authentic pizza made right now is like in Japan, because it's some of the people who are taking the philosophies of pizza making and then doing that stuff, using the ingredients and using it their way and with what they have and with to their taste.
That's really cool.
Did either of you watch Ants on a Shrimp yet?
What?
I know you recommended that.
Oh my God!
Oh, no.
Ants on a
No,
Shrimp,
I
the
haven't.
Noma documentary.
No.
Noma's featured prominently.
I was going to say because
Yeah.
like their experience in Japan leads me to believe that probably the most authentic of any kind of cuisine is probably being made in Japan right now by somebody who's gone just completely down the rabbit hole and
Well, I mean, I
spent-
remember
yeah.
in Momofuku, Chang writes about being trained in soba noodles, and his
Yeah.
teacher finally said after a couple of years, now you either stop training with me or you give over your whole life to this. You have to make a call. This is the fork in the road. Either you give your whole life to soba or you can't stick around.
the soba monk.
Did we tell you about our David Chang story? Will and I when we took David Chang and
To a
when we're
terrible
to,
restaurant?
There's
to
a
the
problem with
worst
Yelp.
No, it was a friend recommendation.
No, it wasn't.
Was it Yelp?
It was Yelp, and
Is
then
there
the
a problem with Yelp?
concierge.
I
so,
never imagined.
So the problem with Yelp is that in some markets Yelp is a measure of quality, and in some markets Yelp is a measure of quantity. And in Southern Texas,
It's a quantity.
it's a quantity. It's a calories per dollar evaluation.
So
Sure.
to set it up, this is an old tested video, but we at one point were able to bring David Chang along with Tracy Dejan to Houston to NASA,
So
and
we got to eat food from outer space. Well, it wasn't from outer space, but we got to
Yes.
eat the food they eat in outer
Yeah,
space.
yeah.
and I think you were unavailable, Adam, so we went
Yeah.
and we picked up Dave and one of his chefs from the airport.
So
And we had been there like a day already in Houston. Houston actually is a hotbed for great food right now, as talked about in this series.
But where Johnson Space Center is, it's a little bit of a food desert because it's way on the
Yeah.
south end of town, away from.
And I'm not
anything.
sure if it was Yelp or if it was a recommendation from one of our friends, but we were looking for a barbecue place. It's like, what's a great barbecue place we have to
I
take?
said, let's go to barbecue or Tex-Mex. What's really good? And the guy was like, oh, this place out on Route 73 or whatever it was.
so
And
we
I looked
drove.
at Yelp. We looked at Yelp.
Yep.
And Yelp looked good. It was like
Yeah,
5,000 positive reviews,
Yelp
4.5
confirmed.
stars. We were
Right.
like, yes.
And so it was like a 20-minute
It
drive
was a long drive.
and chatting with Dave and getting excited about this food, and ended up being like the worst barbecue we've
It
ever
was.
had.
It was.
Oh, that's awesome.
As nobody ate anything. The only thing anybody ate was the peach cobbler, which was exceptional.
Listen,
Peach cobbler-
most people who end up eating with a chef of Tracy or Dave's caliber
Mm-hmm.
ends up wondering, was I able to contribute to Dave's overall enjoyment of food?
No.
And here's the thing. They live their lives not knowing, but you know definitively
Yes.
that you did not.
No,
And
no.
that is a place of comfort.
and-
You should take comfort in that.
Not only that, we know because he said This is one of the worst meals I've ever eaten.
That's amazing. That's an incredible accomplishment.
And so I assume he'll remember that one.
He's an adventurous eater
Never
who
forget.
will try anything, and you gave him one of the shittiest food experiences he's had. I would consider that a badge of honor.
I look, it's a if nothing else, we got a lovely story out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a reasonable place to.
Yeah, that's so good.
I just want to say this about the gun debate. I want to add this last thing. None of us are legislators or experts in this territory.
I mean, you're a firearms expert at this point.
I'm a firearms expert, sure, but that doesn't mean that I am qualified to talk about how this legislation should be written, nor have I asserted that I think there are specific ways that it should be written. I think that I think that background checks, gun show loopholes I think we should have better background checks, gun show loopholes should be closed, and we should digitize the national database of the gun registry. For Christ's sake, that's where everything should start. And we should stop talking about arming teachers. But that's like where I wanted to start talking about this.
The CDC needs to be allowed to study gun violence.
Exactly.
And let's really have if we can't quantify semi-automatic assault rifles in an easy way, then we need to talk about what makes them semi-automatic assault rifles and just talk about, dialing that back.
I totally agree. And so listen, if you're getting activated by us talking about this and you want to post in the comments, I just exhort you not to represent that or any of us are thinking we got to get rid of all the guns, or that look up what a straw man argument is and don't be guilty of it.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to carry this debate any further. We're all agreed we want children to stop dying.
Like the thing is, I'm sitting here with a 5-year-old that's going into kindergarten in the fall. I am already dreading the conversation that's going to come with, "Hey, we had to go hide in the closet in my classroom today.
Yeah.
Why did we do that, Dad?"
That's real.
And that's not that to me does not seem okay.
The last thing I will say that somebody tweeted, you know what? If a network based on the CNN town hall that happened with the kids from Stoneman and the sheriff of Broward and Marco Rubio and the representative from the NRA and Jake Tapper, somebody posted, you know what? If a network wanted to have a weekly show in which children yelled at politicians, I would watch that
every
show
week
religiously.
I mean, just the moment when Marco Rubio stood up and said, "Look, it's really difficult to identify assault rifles. There are 3,000 on the market, and we, blah 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 blah." And
the crowd went nuts.
The crowd was like, "Yeah, that's fine. Ban them all."
And Rubio had misread the crowd, and I watched that professional politician that he is realize that he had misjudged, and I actually loved that he just said, "Fair enough." Like,
what else can you do?
There is nothing else you could do. Talk honestly to the bloody situation.
Yeah. I mean, the thing to remember is that the NRA is, there's 330 million people in the United States right now. There's 5 million members of the NRA, and we're voting as if 90% of people are walking around carrying guns every day. So vote for people who maybe don't believe the same things who maybe believe the same things as you do.
Yeah,
That's what I'm going to suggest.
There you
Midterms are coming up.
There we go. That's as political as we've ever gotten on the podcast. And if that made you upset, I am sorry, but we're also interested in the debate.
We'll see you next week.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Like and unsubscribe.